Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Panels and Bars, the show where we talk about everything comic books, sci-fi, and game related. And this week we are covering the 1979 cult classic Alien, followed by its much bigger sequel, Aliens, released in 1986. Patrick, what are you going to do to sabotage the opening?
I didn't do anything. Did you not see? I tried really hard then. I was very sensible. I didn't point out that it's pronounced plan la blah, and I didn't say anything at all. I sat silently. I did begin to laugh because I was like, oh
You
my god, what am
wanted
I gonna
to.
do? Yeah, like but I held tight there,
I'm proud of
and
you. That's growth.
yeah, and I allowed, well, it's not really growth. I like, the thing is, if you do it every week, it's not funny, right? Like, there's no joke in the world that stays funny week on week.
Do you hear that, Big
So,
Bang Theory?
well,
I mean, I know you're off the air now, but I still despise you.
you hear that Big Bang Theory? Are you out there listening to our podcast? You piece of shit. They're not laughing at us, are they? They're not laughing with us. They're laughing at us. You know,
Yeah,
Star
and
Trek
they're the
isn't a
only ones
punchline.
laughing. Bazinga. Anyway, had forgotten how much I love these two films.
You see, that's interesting because what I would say is, in comparison to the Terminator episode, where I was like, "Oh my god, everything about this," I was a little bit like, so I'm gonna go. I feel like a lot of what I'm gonna say, you could just copy and paste the fucking Terminator episode. Like it's two films. Only one of them is directed by James Cameron,
Yeah.
but the first one is a tight claustrophobic horror film, and the second one is the same thing expanded into a larger action film. But I definitely felt, we'll do Alien first, I guess.
Yeah.
Because that's how doing things works chronologically. I mean, we could do Aliens first.
So
But
here's the thing, right? So it's funny because there's stuff about Alien I much prefer. Um, I do like that even I think with the knowledge that we both have, and anyone who's alive in this day and age has, and you and I've seen it a bunch of times, but I think you can still, there's just still something about it where you can get engrossed in it and be surprised when certain things happen, which I think
one of my
is,
favorite things in the world is that when I first met Beth, we went through this whole long, and I've talked about it before, we went through this whole long thing where she was like, I was like, oh, you named that film. And she was like, I've never seen that film. And I was all like, well, what about this thing in that film? She was like, I've never seen that film. And after a while, I was all like, what films have you seen? And she was like, pretty much just Disney animated classics. And I was a bit like, oh, okay. So we watched a bunch of films,
yeah,
but like, also, she just pays zero fucking attention to like pop culture references to things. Like, if she doesn't know the film, she just ignores it.
yeah.
So like, we watched this and she didn't know what was going to happen during the chest burster scene. And I was just sat there like, oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh God. Oh. And I think I still ruined it by staring at her. But
Yeah.
like, it was so cool. And like, I can see that that's a huge moment. And I had that moment because I'm assuming I haven't told this story before. So the first time I saw Alien, I was 9 years old. And my dad sat me and Ashley in front of the TV and was all like, you gotta watch Alien, And I was like, isn't that like, too scary for us? And Dad was like, if you don't watch it now, it won't really scare you. And so we sat there.
Sound theory?
It was, yeah. And so we sat there and watched Alien, and obviously I had no knowledge of it, and it scared the living shit out of me. But not in a way like I was traumatized. In a way like I think it was the first time I ever experienced a film that was like high tension and was all like, "Oh my God, that was so cool!" Afterwards,
Yeah.
upon rewatching Alien, it's a little slow.
It is a little slow, but I like that. And I like that Sigourney Weaver's not the first cast member mentioned, so you don't automatically think of her as the lead. There is lots of interaction from all of the characters, and she kind of gets dismissed a few times, and other people talk over and things, and she's almost treated as this annoying character for a lot of people. So it's a really good misdirect that she's going to be the final girl. And yeah, I do like that, obviously, like I'm saying, we're seeing it through the eyes of people who've seen it, but I think watching it and just allowing myself to get into it, it does a really good job of making you wonder who, if anyone, is going to survive it. And I think not that it's a mark against it, or a point lost. But I think the sequel loses that sense of tension because she's back. She's quite obviously going to survive now because you've seen the first, and it would be it's a shame that I don't know, maybe there wasn't a new crew that finds her body and they don't have that knowledge that she, you know what I mean? I think that's a really big strong selling point of the first.
Yes. What I would say is that, like, I think that the tension is unbelievable in, like, the last hour. But pacing wise, like, the bit on LV-426 is incredibly long. It's really long. And again, like, I understand that if you've never seen it before, then going into it and being all like, what is this place? Who's that guy? Why is the giant monster in the chair? Would probably be really exciting.
Yeah.
But with the level of, like, in comparison to Terminator, which I didn't have any trouble being all like, okay, let's pretend I've never seen this before. There were bits of this where I was all like, but you know, I have seen this before. And like, it's not like tension building. It's more like nothing's happening at all. And again, I know that that's partly because I know there's not going to be a jump scare. I know there's not going to be a monster at this point, but like, there's no real peril until at least 40 minutes into the film.
Yeah.
And there's not really any real peril until about half an hour before the end.
But
Because,
I
like,
personally think that's quite clever as well because so much of what happens to everyone is because Ripley is the only one who takes anything that happens remotely serious most of the time. You know, I mean, there's you get the two characters who are like, I don't even want to stay if I don't get paid, and they keep driving that point home.
yeah, I really
And-
like them.
Yeah, and it's like maybe if everyone listened to them, you'd all have been fine. And it's because no one thinks there's any way anything remotely bad could happen to them. And by the time they will realize,
Yes.
like most classic horror films, it's far too late.
What I do love also is its vision of the future, which is like light speed travel and laser cutters, but also like CRT monitors and the old. What I think is really, because obviously CRT monitors is kind of forgivable because, you know, that was the technology of the time. They didn't know the technology was going to get better. Obviously, it's really funny watching what's supposed to be the far future, and they're all using what look like fucking regular old 90s video cameras.
I was thinking that
cut
because
out all the time
it's in Aliens as well, and I love that everyone is typing on the chunkiest keys you've ever seen on the keyboard. And it's funny because I think about it and I think, well, what else could they have done? Because, like you said, because it is such, how would they have guessed that? Even if they had guessed that, I think it would be hard to translate to an audience. So, for instance, you know, we're in a point in time where we're still ages away from when this is supposed to happen, and we've got 4K and 8K screens. But I think if they were watching screens that were as clear as they were in real life, an 80s audience might be like, "What are we looking at?" It's hard. So you need grain and Maury patterns to convey that you're looking at a screen, and you need radio cackle to convey someone's on the radio, even though we have super clear audio nowadays.
I think, though, that I would counter that argument with Star Trek, which did spend years presenting us with a vision of the future that was genuinely futuristic. And I know that Alien is going for something that's like a little bit more, like, I don't know, like gritty and real,
lived in.
But I feel like what I'd like to see is, you know, in the future, if they're doing like future stuff and they want to depict problems with technology, is if the problems with technology didn't look like old-fashioned or modern, if they looked just weird, if they were just all like, in the future, when your video screen's cutting out, there's just like pictures of dogs in there, because like just something insane. Because then that way it would be all like, what is that? Like, oh, we're getting some interference. There's some dog on the screen, and it's like, because like that, like, because you know, it's like you say, we don't know now. Like, they couldn't have predicted what errors in video, because like now what we generally get is either a fuzzier image or freezing, and they couldn't have known that was what was going to happen in the future. But you know, it might be better to just invent something that was going to happen when technology was going wrong than go with
frogs again.
the most 70s shit in the entire world. Like, so what I really love, all the practical stuff that's just made out of flesh. So obviously the inside of the eggs and the inside of the face hugger are clearly just fucking seafood or some shit. Do you know what I mean? Like, and that I think is really cool, because that gives it a really kind of visceral, real. I love the shot of the space jockey because obviously like from trivia, but I know that the people around that are children in spacesuits, which they did to try and make it look bigger because they couldn't afford to build one that was big enough to look that big next to adults. And I think that's a really, really cool idea. And what I really like about Vision of the Future is it's all like it's 200 years in the future and everybody smokes all the time. like it's not even like in the future maybe some people will still smoke. It's like in the future smoking is more common than it ever has been. Like it's come back. Smoking's had a renaissance. It's the 70s revival. Smoking.
We try vapes. We want it the old-fashioned way.
But that looks really weird to the modern eye, I think, quite often, because it's like now we live in a world where A, you don't see a lot of people smoking on TV and in movies, and B, you don't actually see a lot of people smoking full stop. Like I see a lot of people vaping, but I don't see a lot of people smoking nowadays. Again, I feel like if I was going to do a sci-fi thing, I'd have some fucking I'd have some weird shaped thing like that people smoked through and be all like, I mean that's just how people smoke now. Like,
I think one thing
it's
just really like about the
first, just a small horn that you put in your eye. Hand me my tobacco trumpet.
Oh no, not that one.
Like,
the menthol.
But lots of things like. But like in Looper, obviously all of the drugs were done by eye, and I really like that because it gives it a kind of little weird. And like when I went to see the new Hunger Games film the other day, and they all take drugs through small glass vials of stuff that they drink. And again, it's like I like that because it's not what we're used to, but it's also still recognizable. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So I was gonna say one thing I do like about Alien and much more than Aliens is, and I know it's a byproduct of a rushed script, but I really like how the dialogue is mostly improvised, and so when they're around the table chatting and joking about pay and things like that, it feels like people talking, and you can kind of see in certain moments it's just people riffing off each other, and even in the more dramatic moments, I think there is a real, like William Hurt is fantastic when he comes back and they think he's fine before that scene. The way he talks is like, there's kind of this embarrassed nature about the fact he fell into the egg, and there's a real realism for what it is. And whilst I think Cameron is, obviously one of the most efficient filmmakers of his time, there is a very 80s and it carried over to the 90s style of dialogue that is in Aliens, which is all efficient and no line of dialogue is wasted, but it does feel like I'm watching people read from a script.
Yeah, what I would say though is that the dinner table scenes in Alien, the sound mix is fucking terrible. Like it's so much of it is just 6 people talking at the same time, and I can't understand anything any of them are saying because they're all just making noise. And like, I know that what they're saying isn't really super important. It's more about creating like a vibe. But I do feel like if you went into this like with fresh eyes, you might be all like, am I supposed to be listening to this? Because I don't understand what the fuck they're saying. Like, obviously the practical effects are gorgeous. Mm-hmm. There's a couple of like matte painting and green screen shots that look awful. Yeah. There are moments, and again, I didn't really remember this, but there are moments where the alien looks a little too funny. Like, specifically with the captain of the ship, I forget his name. He's like crawling down this tunnel and he turns around and the alien does jazz hands at him. And I assume that it's supposed to be a shot of it grabbing him, but it's all like, and it's just this kind of brief shot with like a spotlight on the alien. And it's just a bit like, I'm not sure. And also, like, why are all the shots of the cat so close to it? Like, it seems counterintuitive. It seems like it would be harder to film a cat from that close.
It might be one of those things where like maybe they've got someone holding a treat or something, so they have to hold it in close and you don't see the person having the treat that keeps the cat still.
But they are so frequently like, cat, and the cat takes up the whole fucking screen, and it's all like, and sometimes it's being all like, and it adds to the horror of it. But other times it's just like a shot of the cat wandering about, and I'm like, In fairness, though, and this is a new rating system I'm implementing here, but 7 out of 10 cat. It was a good cat. I liked it. It had a decent amount of cat, this film. Um, and what I really liked was her intense level of concern for the cat, to the point where, like, at times it feels like she's more concerned about saving the cat than the other humans, which I absolutely identify with. And then right at the end, she's carrying the cat box and she just fucking drops it and it like bounces all over the place. I was all like, I know there's no cat in it because it's a prop, but I was a bit like, oh man, that dude's not going to be feeling so happy when when you've just thrown him on the floor in his fucking carrier.
So whilst there are
I
loads
also
of
think
dodgy
it's
effects
wild.
in this, I do want to say Ash, and when we get the reveal for Ash, and you have that final shot. I mean, even though we all know on a practical level it's just the guy's head stuck, that's been cut into some cardboard. We know that because that's realistically the only way they could have done it in the 70s, but not because that's what it looks like. I think it looks really good.
And Ash is genuinely menacing,
Yeah.
and the milk blood is horrible, and the bit where he tries to jam the magazine in her mouth is
Mm-hmm.
obviously like it's like a piece of phallic imagery,
Yeah.
and there's like a kind of a sexual assault quality to it, which is obviously supposed to make the whole thing more disturbing. But like, it's just such a horrible idea. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and it transcends like like gendered boundaries, because like I also don't want a rolled up magazine jammed in my mouth until I choke to death. Like that's
Yeah.
fucking insane. Um, and that's really horrible. And I think that that's a really high quality bit. And like, I just felt like when I put it on, I was really surprised by how long it was.
Yeah.
And then as I was watching it, I was all like, oh, it's because there's loads of bits that I don't remember where nothing happens.
So I
And
think
that
maybe
wasn't
I don't know if
the.
you've played it, but I'm a really big fan of Alien Isolation. And
I love Alien Isolation
yeah,
so much.
well, Alien Isolation also has a lot of moments where the tension comes from the fact that you haven't seen anything in 10 minutes, and then you just hear like something scurry above you, and you're like, oh crap. But then you might not see anything for another 10
Yeah,
minutes.
but it's way scarier when it's you. There was a moment in that game where I was like, I was hiding from the alien. I was hiding in a cupboard, and it walked past, and then Beth was all like, and I just stayed in the cupboard, and the Beth was all like, it's gone past, and I was all like, oh no man, and it kind of came back by, and it walked past, and then like a solid like 2-3 minutes passed, and I was just sat there, and Beth was all like, are you going to leave the cupboard? And I was all like, I don't want to leave the cupboard. I'm fine in here. Everything is okay in the cupboard. And I'm just going to stay here where it definitely can't get me and hide and be safe. And I kind of think that that's like, and that feeling, I think that there is a level at which what really struck me, because obviously a lot of it reminded me of Alien Isolation, but I had a couple of moments where I was all like, a lot of this stuff, and this is so rare, a lot of this stuff works better as a game
Yeah.
narratively, and
Yeah.
that's really interesting, because obviously like they lived in a world where they couldn't possibly have considered that, but it really is. There's loads of bits that remind me of Isolation, and I was all like, oh, but this was and like I've said before, but I don't think games are a natural fit for the kind of narrative structures that people usually try and put on them. Like,
Yeah.
my biggest bugbear with modern games is the fact that I'm spending the vast majority of my time either playing a game or being interrupted from that game so I can watch a terrible, terrible movie. And that's like, and loads of games that over the last couple of years people have been like, oh my god, it was amazing, oh my god, like fucking Red Dead 2 and that PS4 Spider-Man game, God of War. I'm just like, I don't know, man. Like, I didn't enjoy the movie that much, and that was a lot of what I was doing. Like, a lot of my time was spent watching cutscenes, and I'm not like Rockstar stuff, especially, has this kind of sixth former's first piece of creative writing quality about it, where it thinks it's so clever,
Yeah.
and then I'm like, this is like baby's first metaphor here, and I'm supposed to be impressed by it. But like, I think that the bar is so fucking low that a lot of people who play games are like, oh, it had an amazing story, and I'm all like, did it? But
It had a story.
if you've seen that on Netflix, would you have been like, man, that Red Dead show was amazing? It was really about how that man didn't want to kill people, but then he did kill people.
Over and over.
And like, so many of the
again.
missions are just like, yeah. Well, and also then there's that jarring thing that so many games are like, I don't want to kill people anymore. I'm going to move on with my life. And then the mission starts and it's all like, kill 40 people. I'm like, well, it seems like it's like the whole of GTA 4 is just Nico being all like, I really want to move on from my past life as a murderer. And then the mission starts and it's all like, murder many people. And
Yeah,
I'm just like,
I think the only modern game that's got it
So
right is God of War, because God of War, he actively becomes a recluse and like lives at the top of the mountain, and everyone's like, "Fine, we'll come to you and punch you in the face until you become violent again." And so at least it's, you know, it is
yeah.
a character actively trying to move away from it and just still finding himself in these situations where he has to pay for his mistakes in the past.
Yeah, I did not have the ludonarrative dissonance with God of War, but I did think the other thing though is that so much of it, like all of those prestige games, are so fucking dour. It's just miserable. It's just like miserable guy walks. And I think one of the reasons why The Last of Us works better than the rest of them is because it is punctuated by a lot of moments of hope and levity and humor and love, which is something, and beauty, which is something that like a lot of the other ones were like, no, this is a grown-up game for grown-ups. So
Yeah.
everybody is sad all
What
the
we need
time,
is a
every
next gen
day,
Epic
and
Mickey.
everything that happens to them. Oh my god, I'd love that. Like and that's the thing. That's one of the reasons why Final Fantasy generally works for me more, because like it's often underpinned by this kind of strong streak of hope that even when things are bad, we're gonna fight hard and it could be better. And
Yeah.
like, and that's something that I feel like a lot of Western developed games are really lacking.
Mm.
I'm aware that you told me not to go off onto any long tangents at the
It's
start,
us. It
so
was
that we could
bound
try
to
and keep the
happen.
runtime reasonable. And now I'm just talking about narrative-centric video games in the Alien video. But you know, Red Dead 2's
If you
overrated
happen to be
shite.
watching the playlist of our channel, take a shot every time Patrick mentions pacing and narrative structure. We will not be
I
held
like
responsible for
narrative
any
structure.
blackouts.
I mean, just like what I don't understand is like just read Anatomy of a Story by John Truby. It's like 40 years old and it's just right there. And you could just read it. And if everybody in the games and movie industries read it, it would just be that their work would just be better straight away. And it's like,
Yep.
you know, just read it. Just if you're too lazy for that, just go to On Writing. It's a YouTube channel.
Robert McKee
And you know,
story. You can get
yeah,
it for
Robert
like
McKee's story.
£5.
That's
Just get it.
also an excellent choice. It's like there's so many easy books that are all like, here's how to make your story not boring shit.
Literally
And then
read
like
anything by Sid Field. You can read it on the way to work.
oh, I love Sid Field.
yeah,
Yeah.
just read those things, please.
But yeah, like yeah, Save the Cats back in print, which is really nice.
Yeah. You can get it on Kindle, right? Just get it on
And
Kindle.
like yeah, because also Understanding Comics and Making Comics are back in print as well. There's new editions of them with nice new covers.
Nice.
So that's so you can, because for years they were like, there's so many books like that. Like, you know, the Animated Survival Guide was out of print for years and years, and I ended up paying like £60 for it.
Making Comics.
Yeah.
Just get it, people. Very simple.
Just by Making Comics. My copies are all out of arm's reach, but I also have identical copies of all of them. You can imagine those. If you can imagine, I'm going to hold up this copy of Hunter x Hunter 37, but you can imagine that what I'm holding up is an identical book, because I also have those.
I'll Photoshop it in later.
Yeah.
But back to Aliens.
Yeah, sure.
Which has, man, I'm so conflicted with Aliens because I love it. But I think watching them back to back, it's a weird one because I think as a character piece, I much prefer the first. As a spectacle and a sci-fi epic, yeah, obviously no one does it better than Cameron. And there's so much in 2 where he was just one of these guys that, like, there were lots of people who were probably working with even bigger budgets than him at the time, if you could believe that. But they didn't understand how to work within the limitations of visual effects at the time. And he so clearly did. He so clearly surrounded himself with the people that did. So things like rear projection and miniatures, he just utilizes them to their full potential. And that film to this day still looks visually stunning.
Yeah, I gotta say, I fucking loved Aliens. I enjoyed it so much more than the first one. I feel like it's similarly to what we said about Terminator. I feel like there's like this kind of undercurrent from film people where they're like, well, actually, the first one's the best. But I don't know, man. I feel like Aliens does everything the first one did, but better. in a more entertaining way. I feel like giving Ripley, because obviously, like, one of the things that's good about the cat in the first one is that it gives her something to kind of try and protect and look after. And so giving her Newt is such an easy shorthand piece of narrative work to be all
so
like,
let's get it out of the way right now. Is Newt more annoying than John Connor?
no, not at all. No, Newt. No, I think Newt's quite likable. She's a little bit cringy at times, but I think that in general,
She's a good actor, especially for a kid. I think, and it's my problems with her are not down to her; it's down to the script because she spends a lot of the time just shouting "Ripley."
Yep, and screaming,
screaming.
Yeah, there's a kind of a Sam Raimi quality to bits of it where she's just squealing, and I'm all like, "Oh man, that's a horrible noise for kids." But no, she's like, and I think that she's like, I think that she works really well in it. And the thing is that what I would say is that what she really has over John Connor is that even with the screaming and the Ripley, she spends a lot of the film just being quiet. And so, child actor wise, that's a huge, like,
so I'm gonna say one thing, right? The line that's obviously often mocked in this film is they come out at night mostly. And
they mostly come out
they mostly come at night, mostly. And the reason I dislike that line is not because it's stupid, which it is, but because it's always nighttime. Like, you know what I mean? It's not like I Am Legend, where talking about that instills the sense of dread in us as it gets darker and we realize that the protagonist is further away from home than he needs to be to make it in time. It's always night. What are you talking about? It's eternal darkness on that space station. Also, there was no point in the film where what she said is actually demonstrated. You know what I mean? It's not like there was a period of time where there's no aliens and then there's loads of aliens. The xenomorphs are there all of the time. So why is that line in the film?
I think that line's excellent. I think it's really good. I think it's really well delivered for a kid's line. I think it's genuinely terrifying. And I think it's perfect. I gotta say,
it just has no payoff. That's my problem with it. It has no payoff.
I love James Cameron. I'm really starting. The more we do this, the more I'm all like, man, it's so easy nowadays for people to be all like, "Oh, James Cameron. Why does everybody like James Cameron so much? He's
really good.
Awesome.
He's
at
really,
everything.
really good at what he does.
Here's
the thing, right? So I talk about Avatar, and it's not for me. But you'll never ever hear me slag off any of the Avatar films because they are clearly made at an insanely high level. So even though they're not for me, I can still respect the craft. And even something like the Abyss. The Abyss is way too long, but the Abyss is just like you watch it and you're like, yeah, he nearly killed a lot of people making this, but it's a damn good film.
I think that, like, I do like what I really found was that, like, when I went to watch Avatar 2, I can't remember what it was called. Avatar. Oh yes, The Way of Water. Yes. I went in and I was all like, man, Avatar is so fucking overrated. I don't even know why it was so popular. And then I sat down and I watched it and it was fucking great. I really enjoyed it. And then I rewatched Avatar afterwards and I was all like, oh no, this is great too. These are really, like, the thing is that Cameron's bad films are like an 8 out of 10. They're unbelievably, because he's just so good. I saw a thing the other day on Reddit. I'm on the screenwriting Reddit and they were like being like, someone was being like, why does James Cameron get away with having such bad scripts? And I was just a bit like, I just left a comment being all like, if you think that he's got bad scripts, you're a bad writer. Like, because don't get me wrong, his script work and narrative work is not the most complex thing in the world.
Yeah.
What it is it's universal.
Yeah.
Anybody can enjoy it. Anybody can understand it. Anybody can watch it without being confused. And everybody can understand very clearly, not just what's happening plot-wise, but what's happening emotionally and how they're supposed to feel about it. And there's something, and the thing is that it's very easy to look at that and go, this is basic. But I would posit that if it was basic, more people would do it and films wouldn't be
100%,
so shit all the time.
100%.
Like,
Yeah.
because man, people don't like Cameron, right? Like, and that's the thing, is that like there's a reason why that dude is constantly breaking the record for the most popular film of all time. There's a reason why in the top 4 fucking movies ever made, he's got like what, three?
Yeah.
Three of the top 4 most
Yeah.
popular films ever made. It's because
I
he's
mean, here's the
better
thing,
than
like,
everyone else.
it's like we spoke about Ridley Scott, and he'll always have Alien. That's Alien and Blade Runner, amazing things to have in your arsenal, right? But like you said, Cameron has Avatar, Aliens, 2 Terminators, and True Lies. The man made True Lies. I'll fight people about True Lies. I mean, like, physically punch you if you dislike True Lies. That's such a good film.
And like Titanic's so good.
It's
Like,
so good.
I know that everybody's everybody's like, oh, Titanic's not as good. Oh, it's not as good as people say. It is though.
It
like
is.
like when every film in the world feels the need to have a laser that's going to destroy the universe and everybody's going to die to build tension, the amount of tension that man wrings out of a boat sinking is unbelievable. Like, it's genuinely terrifying in a way that so many films with so much more on paper peril just aren't. And that's like,
and the sheer technical, like, the spectacle of it. It's insane to think that one man could direct it. It's unbelievable, especially for that point in time. That level of CG, miniatures, that many extras, that big a set, physical, like, tanks that they were filming in. Yeah. How any man directs that many people in units and without losing their mind is beyond me. It's phenomenal.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny as well because, like, again, so many movies, like, people are like, because, you know, don't get me wrong, again, like the narrative and arc in Titanic, you know, he poor, want to be rich, she repressed, want to be free, is not complex. Mm-hmm. But the fact that so many people don't achieve anything like that, and like the fact that I watch so many films where I'm all like, I don't really understand what journey this person's, I don't really understand what they want, I don't really understand how they feel, like, it's so clear, and that's actually not easy to do. Like, and he gets a lot of shit for his scripts, but man, like, that guy has written more iconic lines than the majority of working Hollywood writers put together.
I mean, Get Away From Me, You Bitch is one of the best lines in sci-fi history.
But also, like, they mostly come out at night, mostly. It's also something that you've heard. I mean, do you know how many iconic lines the first Alien film has?
I'm now kind of scratching my head trying to think of something.
That's right, 0. Nobody remembers a single piece of dialogue from that film. And really, in terms of, like, long-lasting cultural impact, the first one
Game over, man. Game over.
Oh my god! I in fact, let's get into that. I fucking love Bill Paxton in this.
He's so good in this.
I love the absolute cocky prick and the fact that he just falls to pieces at the first sign of any problem. And then instead of it being one of those scenes where he's all like, I've pulled myself together now, things are okay, the whole rest of the film, he's always one mild problem away from being all like, we're all gonna die! We're all gonna die! It's so, and he's like, it's so funny, and like, it works, and I love that so well.
Ripley doesn't even like try and talk him down and get him in a headspace where it's like, you've got this. She's like, I'm getting real tired of your shit.
Yeah, and also she's just like, you're fucking pathetic. Like, I'm not even a soldier. You know, and I think that as well is like, it builds her character in such a natural feeling, like, efficient way, and it's funny, and he's annoying, and yet, you know, when he gets dragged under the floor and killed,
you really
I'm sad.
Yeah.
And again, that's a line that walking that line is so fucking hard.
Yeah.
And like Burke in this is hateable to a degree, like Billy Zane in Titanic level. Like, he's such a slimy piece of shit. And yet, what I'd forgotten is that for the first half of the film, he seems like
he's pretty likable. Yeah,
he seems really nice and stuff. And then even when he's exposed, he's still like, oh, hey man, you know, you really just need to understand how things work. I'm sure I was trying to kill 1 million people, but I could have made a small amount of money. And that is just such an impressive, like, the performance is great, but the script and gets a lot of credit there.
So yes, you taken the words right out of my mouth, because just speaking to what you were saying, that like, yeah, he doesn't write the slickest dialogue or whatever, but going back to all those books we spoke about and Save the Cat, one of the things that anyone who's ever had done any kind of media course, writing course, will tell you, they hit you over the head with it, is Chekhov's gun, king of that, and it's showcased throughout this. There is, finding out Ripley's got a new job, so she's learned how to use
The power, yeah, the power
the power
load. Oh
suit.
my god.
And so there's a great scene where you first see it demonstrated, and what's great is she kind of stuttered through her explanation of what the xenomorphs are and what they do. So everyone's a bit cautious of her, and she doesn't really have that much credibility. And then she does that, and it shows the other characters, oh, she's a lot more credible and talented than we gave her credit for. And then it establishes in our brain she knows how to use this. So later on, it's not some Mary Sue thing. We're like, oh no, she's got experience in this. She knows exactly how to weld it. And there's tons of moments like that in the first half, whether it's the nightmares. So if you've never seen the first film, you don't have any context for anything. You have the nightmares. It shows you she's been through a traumatic event. And then later on, when the first chest hugger comes out, the face hugger comes out and bursts out the chest, you see in her face and you understand that trauma. You understand she's reliving this experience. And see, there's not a wasted line of dialogue. There's not a wasted expression. There's not a wasted close up. It all pays off.
And like the power loader scene tells us about her, and it's cathartic because she's proving people wrong. And then their reaction to it, which instead of being all like, oh, she really got us, is being all like, oh, she's cool. And then just carrying on with what they're doing because they don't care that much. Tells us about them, and it makes them likable, and it makes her likable, and it's a cool effects shot, and it's a cool piece of sci-fi imagery. It's working on like 10 levels, and all of them are firing so fucking hard. And that's the thing about everything in this. Like the fact that when they established the scanner thing, they give it that beat noise. So it's all like, if the scanner's on, it's making the beat noise. And then they don't need to keep showing us the fucking screen all the time. They can only show it to us when it's relevant. And then they have the scene where the scanner fails them because the aliens are in the roof. And it's just...
Man, can we talk about that scene, please?
And they're like calling out the numbers. They're this far away. They're this far away. They're this far away. The door's sealed. We've got to get the door sealed in time. And they get the door sealed, but then it doesn't matter because now they're in the room. How could they be in the room? And then Hicks looks up through the ceiling and he shines his torch, and there's like 100 of them. And
what's great is that's another scene that was set up where when we first realized they're in the building, Ripley goes, "I must have missed something," and everyone's like, "No, there's no way you missed something," and she didn't. They just didn't think that they were smart enough to climb through the vents. It's so good.
Yeah, and like again, I love that bit where they cut the power. And everyone's all like, "What do you mean they cut the fucking power? They're animals." And it's just like, "Oh no, they smart." And like, and then that is what builds us up to the best scene in the film, which is the bit where Ripley walks into the field of eggs and stops, and then it's silent, and she looks around, and the facehugger eggs are everywhere, and then she looks up and sees the Queen, and the Queen sees her, and she points her flamethrower at the eggs, and the Queen's just all like,
But what I love about that is before the camera even pans, the look on Sigourney Weaver's face, and I already know what it is that she stepped into.
You know, and even if you don't know exactly what it is, you know that something terrible has happened. And like, even Newt is aware that something awful is going on. And like, and then she backs away through the field of eggs. And it's like her and the alien queen have come to kind of an agreement. And then she just burns them all. She's just all like, fuck your eggs. And like, again, and that kind of, and that cathartic, that thing where Ripley's overcoming her trauma through action feels so, and there's no moment where she's all like, I think now I'm going to be okay. Do you know what I mean? Like, and again, in a script as bad as people say Cameron's are, it would be more on the nose, but it's not. It's subtle, and it's developed carefully, and it's paid off through action, and it's just so fucking good.
It is.
Like, and then you've got the industrial design. So like, obviously the power load is iconic, but the ships and the car and the weapons.
So the car / tank, that's Elon Musk's Cybertruck, right? That's where he stole that from.
Yeah, probably.
Like, I mean, look at it. He just watched Aliens and was like, No one will realize I've stolen this very iconic design. You just did
The
that
fact that
thing.
when they go through the door into the facility, the gun on the back of the car automatically lowers down to get out of the way. Such a neat little piece of design.
Yeah,
Nobody draws attention to it. Nobody talks about it. It's just a lovely little piece of sci-fi imagery. And that's the thing that this one that I love. I love sci-fi design. And that's the thing that this one gives me way more than the first one did. The weapons in this are
so cool. Yes,
unbelievably
so cool.
cool. And like that scene where Hicks, that's kind of slightly flirty scene where Hicks teaches her how to use a gun, is it's good for both their characters.
Yeah.
He's Michael Baine's Bean.
I usually say Bean, but yeah. Why is he not the lead in more things? He's great every time he works the camera.
He's so great in this. He's so likable. I fucking the nuke from orbit scene where she's all like, "We should nuke him from orbit. That's the only way to be sure." And then they have that argument about who's in charge, and Hicks is in charge. He just turns around and is all like, "I think we should nuke him from orbit. It's the only way to be sure." It's just so
I
well
love how
delivered.
everyone's quite dismissive of Newt as well, and he's just like pulling her up on the table and like
Yeah.
interacting with her and making her feel at ease. Like it's just subtle things that make you like his character even more.
Yeah, like he wants her to be involved, and that's such a little thing. But again, and I would say, you say, "Oh, he doesn't write the slickest dialogue in the world." I would say, yes, he does. Like he absolutely. There are so many fucking
Bishop
excellent
is
lines.
great.
Yeah, Bishop's amazing. And the way that plays on our expectations from Ash, and even if you hadn't seen the first one, it catches you up on why she's suspicious. Obviously, there's the
And Bishop
five
has
finger.
this underlaying. It's not as obviously as creepy as Ash, and maybe our knowledge of Ash plays into it, but there is something there where you're like, I don't know if I trust this guy.
He's a bit creepy though, isn't he? He's
Yeah.
quite creepy. And like the five finger fillet scene where he puts his hand over Bill Paxton's and does the knife, like it's just awesome scene after awesome scene, excellent set piece after excellent set piece. Like it's so good all the way through, and it's so logical, and it's so like the scene at the start where the Marines roll in and they're so fucking full of themselves, and they're all like, "This is going to be great. We're all going to just kill all these aliens," and then like 3/4 of them just get murdered.
Yeah, and I love that. Like what it does really well is there's a bunch of stuff where Ripley's like they cannot use their guns there. And instantly they're going to use their guns the minute that she says that. But it's not an eye-rolling thing. It adds that tension because it's like they don't know. They don't realize what's going to happen if they use their guns. And because of the way the characters have been established, it's going to happen. And you've got no choice but to stand and watch as they make an already bad situation even worse.
And because the incompetent lieutenant guy, he tells them not to use their guns, but he doesn't tell them why, because he's not experienced enough to understand that it's important to give them that information and context. And so if he'd have just said, "Don't use your guns, you'll nuke us all," they wouldn't have used their guns. But because he's not got that experience, and like that guy who's playing the lieutenant, he's brilliant. Yeah. He's excellent in his role. He gets and I love that scene where him and Vasquez set off the grenade together, and he like redeems himself and shows that he is a real soldier. That bit at the start where they're dropping into atmosphere and he's clearly shitting himself, and they ask him how many times he's dropped, and he's all like, counting this one too, and it just cuts to Hicks and he's asleep. It's like, and it's just establishes so neatly that he should be the leader, which makes it cathartic. What I would say is that like this film is just like all payoff. It's constantly paying off things that I didn't even realize it had set up. And so it feels so satisfying to watch. And like, I can't say enough good things about Aliens. And I also can't say enough good things about James Cameron, who through the process of doing this podcast, am falling completely back in love with. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm constantly sitting around being all like, man, James Cameron's the best. Jesus Christ. Like, how is he that good?
Honestly, I'm very tempted to elect True Lies as my recommendation for next week. I'm only hesitating because it's not really geeky. But I'll see how I feel at the end of this episode because it's such a good movie.
I mean, I'm gonna say something here which you're not gonna like, but no one gives a shit if about the theme of the channel. Like no one cares, man. Like no one gives a fuck. It
I
doesn't
mean,
matter.
we watched Heartbreakers for goodness
Yeah,
sake.
like
So.
it literally doesn't matter. What this is a movie podcast and a TV podcast, and the theming doesn't matter. What we like, the content will be better if we watch things that we enjoy, and I can guarantee you that if we watch James Cameron movies, I, at the very least, will enjoy them and be very happy. Yeah, so Aliens, honestly, it's another straight 10 out of 10 banger
Yeah,
from
it's a
your
banger.
boy James Cameron.
Yeah.
Like it's unbelievably good. And I would say Alien is
Solid,
fine, but maybe a little overrated by, I get that it's kind of the Beatles syndrome thing where it's a bit like
Nothing had come
it's
out at that time that was like that.
yeah,
Basically.
and that's, but it's hard to view it like that. Even as somebody who watched it when I was a kid and hadn't ever seen anything like that, I still like, I don't think it holds up as well as I expect it to. I gotta say, I also watched Blade Runner a few years ago and felt that by it. I'm thinking maybe my theory about Ridley Scott losing it was incorrect. Maybe Ridley Scott was never that good. Like, you know, I saw the Napoleon trailer the other day and I was just like, oh, no, man. Like, all of this looks like it should be good, but
Man,
Ridley
I
Scott?
read a quote from one of the interviews he's doing to promote Napoleon, and they were asking him about like historical accuracy, and he was like, "I don't have time for that. That's up for the guy who wrote the script." So he has no idea whether half the things in the film even happened. He just knows the things that he likes that he thinks are cinematic, and it's like, I'm sorry, but if you're telling a Napoleon story, it might help to care about Napoleon. I don't know.
Well,
I could be
I
wrong.
also kind of think as well that like there's a level at which I'm often like, is this Ridley Scott film? Does it stand any chance of being good? I'll see who wrote the script. And when I check this guy's IMDb, he's written like 6 things ever, and like over a long, like he's been working in Hollywood for like 20 years, and he's only ever written 6 things. In fact, he's only ever written like 5 movies. He wrote 3 episodes of The Man in the High Castle, but like, whilst I love that show,
They weren't
you
good
would have
episodes.
well, you'd have to tell me which ones, and I didn't recognize them from the names because like it was not a consistent program at all, and I would not be surprised. He wrote the Day the Earth Stood Still remake. I was like,
Yeah, I mean, I
so
was
yeah.
never going to watch it anyway, but that's just the nail in the coffin.
I tell you what, I saw another trailer though for a movie called The Iron Claw. Have you seen that trailer?
That looks great.
Oh my god, like buff Zac Efron looks so good. Like, I gotta say, I'm gonna throw something out there which I think might be a deeply unpopular opinion, but I love Zac Efron.
I love
I
Zac
think
Efron
that
too.
like I really like, whenever I say, oh yeah, Zac Efron's in it, like that's a good thing, people kind of look at me like, and I'm like, are you only familiar with his work on High School? Which, in fairness, I'm going to throw something out here, which is kind of out of character. But High School Musical, also great, excellent. But like, he's like, I've seen a bunch of movies with him in now where
He
he's
can
been
really
really
act.
good,
He's very funny.
and he's really likable. He's
Yeah, he
really
is.
charming. And then it's also got Jeremy Allen White in it
Yeah.
and Bill from Mindhunter. I was all like, what was really funny about it was that we were sat there in the cinema watching it, and Beth turned to me when the trailer ended and was all like, "Do I want to see a wrestling film?" And
I
I
mean,
was all
one
like,
thing I will say is,
yeah.
it's from A24, who, as everyone knows now, are just banger after banger after banger. So, yeah, with that cast and that studio behind it,
Yeah,
would be suited.
I'm feeling that it's going to be a good film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Patrick, what's
So
really good?
in terms of what's really good, I can tell you what's not really good, and that is the new Hunger Games film.
I was going to ask you.
We went to see the new Hunger Games film. We went to the IMAX. So Beth is a big Hunger Games fan.
I like the first two.
You know when it's you're feeling a bit ill, or it's a cold day, or it's a Sunday, and you just need something to relax. Beth's comfort film is the child murder story. What really relaxes her and makes her feel safe and warm and happy is watching a bunch of children get brutally ritualistically slaughtered. So she was really into this. She was really excited about this, and I like the Hunger Games a lot. I think, in retrospect, mostly because Jennifer Lawrence is so cool.
Yeah.
But
something cool I learned today?
There's still.
Do you remember that scene in the original Hunger Games
I
when
don't.
Jenna Malone gets naked in the lift? And
that's in Catching Fire, isn't it?
Catching Fire, and Woody Harrelson's just like, she's naked, and Jennifer Lawrence is like, oh gosh, this is awkward. Jennifer Lawrence was not in the same room as Jenna Malone when that was filmed. She was like super ill. She was like super ill for big parts of that film. So they just superimposed her in a bunch of scenes. But that is one of the ones where it's hardest to tell. Like, she nails that.
Yeah, it's like those bits in Blade Trinity where Ryan Reynolds is talking to an empty car because Wesley Snipes was too busy getting high to go and to do the filming, and so Ryan Reynolds is just saying like increasingly stupid things because he knows that they're just going to cut in a shot of Wesley Snipes nodding, and so he can say whatever he wants, and it doesn't matter how weird it is. Yeah, but like the new Hunger Games film. So you know when people adapt books into movies and TV shows, there's always a bunch of book readers who are like, oh, they missed this bit. Oh, my favourite scene here. Oh, it doesn't work. Well, this film asks the question, what if we adapted the whole book real fast? So it's constantly like, okay, so there's this group of people, and they are all his other students who are at the school with him, and one of them doesn't believe in the class system, and one of them does, and one of them's rich, and he's rich, but he's not rich, but he's pretending to be rich because his family used to be rich, and now most of them are dead, so don't worry about that. Anyway, he thinks that the Hunger Games could be improved if he had like he's got some ideas for how it could be improved, and they've asked him to write a report about those ideas, and now they've all been accepted and they're all being implemented right now. In fact, they've all already been implemented in this scene. Here we go. And it's just like there's just no time for anything to breathe at all because it's squeezing so much plot in, and so consequently it's very hard to care about anybody or anything because like I've only seen it for like 30 seconds before it's either obsolete or has changed. And so like it was, and that was not great. At the start, it revealed that the lady who's playing the Katniss role in this, the girl in the Hunger Games, is a singer. She's played by Rachel Zegler from West Side Story. But, so I was expecting her to be able to sing. But I thought it was going to be like cringe. But like insanely, the songs were the best bit, which is not what I was expecting at all. The main guy playing young Donald Sutherland is fine, but he's just having to blitz through plot and emotions so fast that it doesn't really ever quite come together. There's some really good supporting characters. Peter Dinklage is in it and he's great. And Viola Davis she's kind of got the same role that Elizabeth Banks had in the original movies, where she seems to be the only one who's realized how fun this could be. And she's like playing the maddest woman of all time. And she's constantly just being all like, I've got a big tank of snakes. and everybody else is playing it like super straight. And she's just fucking insane. No. And so she's really good. But obviously, Viola Davis does go on that list where, like you could be like, so what we've got is a film where Viola Davis eats dinner and then talks briefly about how well her new phone works. And I'd be all like, give her the Oscar. So yeah, she's brilliant, but it just doesn't quite give me enough time with anything to care about it. And like it keeps like there's a really weird plot choice. Well, there's a really weird. No, it's not setting up a franchise. That's the thing, is that it's one of those bizarre other things where there's enough material here for probably 2 movies, maybe 3, but they've jammed it all into one, and at the end they don't leave it on a cliffhanger that's supposed to be a sequel. It doesn't feel like that at all. It absolutely wraps us back up to where the Hunger Games would start. So I don't know why they've made. Maybe they weren't confident enough that it would do well.
Yeah.
To split it this time.
Maybe
like
it's
really just got kind of
something.
Yeah, and it's like the main relationship between Singing Girl and him is really engaging, but it just never has enough time to build. And then there's like this weird thing where I was sat there and I was all like, I understand that you're making a prequel and you don't want to have the accusation that you're just making the same film again. But what would really help with fixing the problems of this is if instead of President Snow, the main character was the girl forced to compete in the Hunger Games. That would really probably liven this whole thing. I feel like I'd have more tension. It would be more interesting. I like her more than the main character. Yeah. But the point Beth made was like, this was such an obvious opportunity to have a Hunger Games film with an ensemble cast.
Yeah.
where you didn't know who was going to win,
Yeah.
and it like and there was actual tension because you might like different characters and you might want them to
Well,
be
I'd
okay,
also like
but
them to make
instead
characters a
early
bit
on
more
it's
complex, because one of the things that I do love the original films, but one thing about Katniss is that she never has to make any difficult decisions, because whenever there's a point where she might
yeah.
have to kill a child or an old lady, the old lady kills herself and someone else kills the child. And it's like, okay, well, we can still love her. It would be nice to have a character who has that level of charisma and skill and underdog story, but put them in an actual difficult position where we as an audience have to think, oh, can we sympathize with her because she had to do it, or have we turned on her now? But they never do that.
Yeah, and with this, it's so weird that they're like, yeah, this one's going to survive, and they tell you like, and they basically tell you straight away. There's also a really weird choice where they've decided that they're going to set it during a time when the Hunger Games was losing popularity because it was shit, um, and so they're all like, let's go back to the time when the Hunger Games had less funding and wasn't as interesting. And I was just like, well,
I don't want that at
that's an
all.
odd
I want the
choice,
good
isn't it?
one.
Really? Yeah. Yeah, and also there's this really irritating aesthetic thing where it's like a prequel. So they've made all the future technology look like it's from the 60s, but it's like I always kind of assumed that the Hunger Games was the future of our world.
Yeah, so it would
So
still be
then
more futuristic than
when
the stuff we have now.
yeah, it wouldn't be 60s CRT televisions. That's fucking insane. Like and yeah, like the guy presenting the Hunger Games is really good though, and it's there's I think it's one of those movies where there's a lot of really good stuff in it, and so it makes it more disappointing how bad it is in places. Yeah, so it's I probably wouldn't recommend it, which is a shame because it's
You
so
say wait till it comes from
close. But yeah,
streaming, or
it's yeah maybe. I watched it in IMAX though, and the sound was unbelievable. It was fantastic.
cool. So
Yeah, I
I've
think
got three
that's
things which I'll probably list in like level of interestingness. First, as I spoke to you before we started filming, but Rick and Morty this season has been really solid. Um, the last two episodes between them feature one of the best action fight scenes in Rick and Morty's entire run, and one of them features one of the best emotional scenes ever. And it's part of what makes it so good is they set it up in a way where you've watched so much Rick and Morty that it starts off and you're like, well, this is just going to be a rug pull and this won't be fun at all, and there'll be some horrible twist. And no, it's this montage which is absolutely sincere and absolutely heartbreaking. Um, it comes in the middle of a batshit insane episode, but it's just one of those things that makes you realize that when they want to, when they're at the top of the game, the writers and producers of the show can produce one of the best sitcoms going. So I know you said you're going to wait till all episodes are out, and I would honestly would recommend most people do that because it's just great. It's not as weird and off the wall as it was, but it's a lot more focused. I think the ratio of jokes that land have been much stronger than the past few seasons, so I would highly recommend it. The next thing would be David Fincher's The Killer, which is the second of his four
oh
movie
yeah
deals
yeah. I've
with
been wanting to watch
Netflix.
that.
Oh man, so I didn't. I'm a massive David Fincher fan. I didn't like the first of his Netflix collaborations. Um, I'm not crazy about period pieces anyway, and I'm not crazy about films where Hollywood is like, isn't it amazing how amazing Hollywood is? So Mank just didn't work for me. But The Killer,
Yeah.
oh baby, it's a spicy meatball. Um, yeah, it's beautifully shot. Listen, your thing could be a one. If Tilda Swinton's in it, you earn 5 more points, and Tilda Swinton's in this, so we're winning. Um, and then it has, I'm going to say, I mean, I know we still have a month left and something can come out of left field and surprise me, but it has the best fight scene of any action movie this year. It's brutal, it's visceral, it feels like a real fight. Like it just feels like two people scrambling, not really having an idea, just trying to hurt each other. So like using anything and everything they can at their disposal and just scrapping. And it's horrible. And you kind of, it's not even a point where you want the protagonist to win. You just want it to be over. You're like, I don't care which one of you guys wins as long as you stop punching each other. And it's just fantastic. Yeah, highly recommend it. It's not Fincher's best work, but for something that's gone straight to a streaming platform, yeah, it's great. And the last thing,
Well, and also it's hard. It's hard to be like it's not Fincher's best work. Like the dude made Seven. Like it's you know what I mean.
yeah,
Like
exactly.
it's not
It's
gonna
what we were saying
be
about
his
Cameron is
best
that
work,
like
right?
even a bad day, even a day off for Fincher is just like he's still killing it, man. He's David
Yeah,
Fincher.
it's still
Yeah.
incredible.
And the last thing is The Curse, which is the new TV show starring Nathan Fielder and Emma Stone. Um, and Nathan Fielder is just one
Yeah,
of
yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
best character actors at the moment, and this is just such a good vehicle for both of those two. It plays into everything I like about them. She's super likable, but she's playing a character where you're sure something is under the surface. Um, he's just, I mean, I don't have to tell you that his character's weird. You know he's weird because Nathan Fielder's playing him.
Yeah, because he's a
Um,
weird guy. Yeah.
yeah. And yeah, no, it's, I don't want to say too much about it. Just watch it. This is actually, so they've only had one episode air so far. And I think due to the fact that I've been waiting all week for a new episode to air, this is probably one of those ones where I'd say to people, maybe wait till the end of the season and just binge it, because I'm going crazy waiting to see how they follow up last week's episode. But what I've seen so
Yeah.
far, gorgeously shot, really well paced, fantastically edited. It's just really funny in places. Yeah, no, like you often hear people talk about golden age of television, but this is really one of those things where I'm like, oh man, I'm so glad we live in a time where people are greenlighting this type of stuff. It's fantastic so far. So yeah, I can't wait to see where they go with it.
Oh, actually, you know what? The other thing that I want to throw in is, you know what's good is the new season of Ink Master. I don't know if you watch Ink Master.
Is that the tattoo show in the States?
It's like Bake Off with tattoos, right?
My mum loves that.
And so, yeah. So the thing is that historically, the problem was
Just like,
because the
shout out to
tattoo
my
industry
mum,
is.
because my mum is like always the first person to comment on our video. So thanks, mum. We love you and we appreciate you.
Hi. Yeah. So the thing about Ink Master is that because the tattoo industry is historically, it's been unbearably misogynistic. And also, it used to be one of those reality shows that spent a lot of time getting all the people to shout at each other and spent a lot of its episodes runtime showing them all shouting at each other. And it's come back this season, and I don't really know what's happened, but somewhere along the way, they've been like, hey, what if this wasn't horrible? And it's actually transitioned into kind of a bake-off vibe where everybody is kind of respectful of each other. They all just seem super excited to be there. They're sad when people get kicked out. They treat each other with respect. They've had more representation. There's more women. There's some people who are openly gay. It's and it's really not, because I've watched it all the way through because I really, really like looking at pictures of tattoos. And I really like watching people do tattoos, and I really like listening to people talk about how they do tattoos. So for me, it's always been interesting, but it was always one of those things that was interesting, but made me feel kind of gross for liking it.
Yeah.
And I feel substantially less like, still a little bit. Yeah. And it's hosted, the big problem is that it used to be hosted by Dave Navarro from Jane's Addiction, who is slimy but charismatic. Like, he seemed kind of gross, but he is cool. Do you know what I mean? Like, but now it's hosted by Joel Madden from Good Charlotte. Yeah, now it's hosted by Joel Madden from Good Charlotte, who has the exact opposite thing, where he seems like a nice guy, but man, is he boring. And he's also, he's always wearing Good Charlotte merchandise, and I'm all like, I get wearing your own band's merch. That's fine. Yeah, maybe you want to sell it. But also, if I was in Good Charlotte, I don't think I would. I think I'd want people not to remember that. I think I'd be all like, did they? Ink Master is much better this season. The Ink Master community on Reddit seem very angry about it. I assume because
we want more
they have been watching for 15 seasons. So yeah, well, also the problem is that, so there were these two judges who they used to have, who were awful misogynists, but were really good at talking about why tattoos were good and bad. And one of them, as it turns out, there were pictures of him doing a lot of blackface. So he got fired, and they had to shake it up. So what I would say about Oliver Peck from Ink Master is that he is like a fucking hillbilly. Like he's like the most southern guy in the world. He looks like he's come straight out of a scene from Deadwood. And when the pictures came out, he was basically all like, "Yeah, man, like that's bad. I used to think that was funny, and it isn't. It was a poor choice on my part. Shouldn't have done that." But obviously, pictures of you in blackface kind of impossible to come back from.
Yeah.
But I think the issue is that I don't know whether it's like, because I kind of think it's a bit of a situation where it's like, okay, it was a long time ago. He made a very bad choice, but he came from a place where that kind of stuff was normalized, and
Yeah.
he now understands that it isn't okay.
Yeah.
I don't think that that's like I don't think he's like he's not Mel Gibson.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, I'm not sure how much of the people missing him is because they think that, and how much of it is people who are all like, "Black it up's fine." And I understand that you would probably not want to tread that line,
Yeah.
but it's one of those things which we've talked about before, where it's kind of it's impossible not to notice that, like, crazy and misogynistic and kind of racist as they were, the old judges were better at judging.
Yeah.
So that, yeah, and so that's kind of, and it is worse. But I'm enjoying it a lot. The Game Awards is back on the 7th of December, and voting is open. So if you care about games, you should go and vote on Game of the Year.
Sweet.
Because anybody can vote, and it's cool. It's a fun thing to do. Unfortunately, the awards show itself is on American time in the evening, so it runs from midnight till about 4:30.
Yeah, I'm too late for that.
I'm planning on sleeping 12 hours the night before, going to bed really early, so that I can
Really
just
good
not
idea,
sleep that night and watch the Game
they had
Awards.
the Apple reveal of the new MacBooks like 3 weeks ago, and my body's still recovering, so I definitely can't do the Game Awards.
Yeah. Yeah, that's my plan. But generally there's like some really cool trailers for new games there. It's a fun watch. It's not always. I think it's kind of silly sometimes, but I don't know. I kind of like to see games be like, it's all a bit self-serious, but I kind of like seeing games be taken seriously by people. So for me, it's always a fun thing to watch. And
Plus, a
you
lot
can
of the
go
time,
vote for
it
Zelda
doesn't
for
go
Game of the Year.
super smooth as well. Like, so I kind of love seeing the bloopers and the host be very embarrassed as they've read the wrong thing from the teleprompter. So yeah, bring on more of that stuff.
Yeah, last year that guy ran on stage and shouted something about Bill Clinton. There's the infamous. I don't know if you've ever seen that clip of. Have you ever seen that clip of Joseph Fares? He directed It Takes Two and a couple of other games.
Yes.
And there was this time where he was on the Game Awards, and he was clearly super drunk, and Jeff Keighley was like, "You happy to be here?" And he was like, "Yeah, man. I used to work in Hollywood, and Hollywood sucks, but now I work here, and I want to say, Jeff, fuck the Oscars."
Yeah.
And Jeff's a bit like, "Oh," and he's all like, "No, seriously though, fuck the Oscars, and it's just like, oh my god, Joseph, like, please stop." But yeah, in the absence of E3, also, like, we haven't got as many big things to watch each year, so I fucking love the Game Awards.
Cool.
And yeah, like, there's been a fun discourse this week where insane Harry Potter fans have been all like, "Why isn't Hogwarts Legacy nominated for Game of the Year?" It's all like, well, because from even the people I know who decided to buy it because they don't care about funding a transphobic hate campaign, even those people don't seem that into it. Like, I mean, it seems like it's a solid 6 out of 10 game.
Any year where that game has a solid chance of being Game of the Year is a terrible year for gaming.
Yeah. Well, and also on top of that, like I'm not super into the idea that Spider-Man 2's been nominated. I was a bit like, I don't know, if it's the same as the first one, it definitely doesn't deserve it. But obviously I'm also kind of like Zelda all day, 100%. Like, I voted for mostly Zelda. I voted for Final Fantasy 16 a couple of times. I voted for, like, it's been such an amazing year, such a great year for games. So I think it'll be really fun.
Cool. So don't forget to watch that, guys, and let us know in the comments if you tuned in, what you think. Thank you as always for watching. Remember to like, subscribe, and to the surprise of nobody, next week we'll be watching James Cameron's True Lies.
Yeah, we will. Next week on Plan Le Blah, we're going to discuss more Clee and Bleal glitches. And that'll be really fun, won't it?
I despise you. We'll see you next week. Bye. Bastard.